This is Coach Alex from Electrum Performance, and today I want to go over the best squat for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Now that's a bit of a trick because there is no one squat that is best for BJJ. It's about finding the best squat for you at this point in time. There's a few things that go into that. First and foremost, we want to have a degree of repetition. Whatever squat you do have that seems to be working, we want to train it for a period of time and try to get as good at it as possible. Repetition drives adaptation. The next thing that we want to keep in mind is that we want to pick a squat variation that agrees with our body. And I'm going to give you some options, things that you can try. Ones that seem to agree with your body a little bit better, let's run with those for a time. Because if we're able to train something consistently and pain-free, we're going to see a lot of progress that then translates to the mats. And the last thing that I want to go over is a squat that addresses specific needs that you have. So as I go through some of these variations and some of the things that make them unique, if you find that that translates well to what you think you need on the mats, that's probably a really good variation for you to try. So I'm here with Coach Matt, and the thing that most people think of when we mention squats are the back squats. So we'll go over that first. So Matt's gonna get set up facing the rack here, and you can get set up in either the high bar or the low bar position. For high bar, it'll be up on the meat of the traps. For low bar, it'll be, the bar will be lower and will be on the bunched up rear delts. But for today, we're gonna go with the high bar position. It's the one that most people are familiar with. From here, he walks it out. We're gonna aim to keep our feet nice and flat on the ground. Hips break first, and what I mean by that is his body's in a straight line. That plane is broken first by the hips and then the knees. He goes as low as he can while keeping his feet nice and flat on the ground, and then returns upward. An advantage of a back squat is that it's generally one of the heavier variations. So if we're looking for applying total load to our body, this is a very good exercise to do so. If we're doing high bar, there's a huge demand on those postural muscles as well. So squat number 2, we're going to look at a front squat. Now we have a couple posts on different grip variations. If you can't get into the clean grip like Matt's going to here, but Matt's gonna get into the clean grip for the front squat. He's gonna keep his elbows high and he's facing out of the rack. Generally that's not standard practice, but it makes it a little bit easier for you guys to see it. So keeping his elbows and upper arm very high, he's going to drop into a squat. This is gonna be a much more upright variation of a squat when compared to that back squat. A lot of people say that we tend to get a bit more quad activation due to that upright position. And there's a huge demand on the upper back to maintain this posture, especially as we start training closer to failure. So the next squat that we have is a box squat, and we're gonna do this from the high bar position. Couple details before Matt gets into his first rep. If we're using a square box like this, I like to have one corner pointed forward so that we can guarantee that as we walk back and our calves make contact with the box, that we're going to be sitting directly on it. Another thing that I really want to emphasize is that Matt wants to maintain contact with his calves as long as he can in this motion. And to do that, he's gonna have to really drive his hips back. I like to tell clients to envision that they have their hands full of groceries and they're closing a car door with their ass, right? We're really pushing that butt back and initiating with the hips. The box squat is a great way to get you to learn how to really trust in your hips and allow yourself to load them a ton in your squat. Even with Matt here, I would actually say further back with your hips. Yep. We want to sit back more. Keep your hips, your calves in contact even longer. Yep. Push those hips back. Keep pushing them back and then descend down onto the box. Excellent. When the hips translate back like that, we're loading them a lot more than the knees. And this can be a really useful way for us to start to load the hips preferentially in a squat. Once we get down to the bottom, we deload through the box. We don't just tap, then we re-engage the legs and stand back up. Generally, I have clients go super slow on the way down, focusing on hips. Once they sit, they're then going to explode forward and up. Excellent. Really explode on this next one, Matt. So nice and slow on the way down. Good, he did a great job of pushing his hips out, and then he explodes forward and up. Excellent. Another great squat variation, one that people don't do as commonly, is a Zercher Squat. So we're going to put the bar in the crook of the elbows. We're gonna keep the hands apart and keep those shoulders externally rotated. Matt's gonna walk forward out of the rack. Again, not something we normally do, but makes it nice and easy to see. And this variation in particular puts a ton of stress on the upper back to maintain posture as we go through this squat. If you're really mobile like Matt or myself, you may be somewhat limited by depth, But for somebody who uses a lot of underhook positions in jiu-jitsu, it can be really useful to train these postural muscles that are taxed just to keep the weight in position as we squat here. The last squat variation we want to go over is a goblet squat. We're going to keep that dumbbell held in that goblet position out in front of us. This is another more upright squat variation. And again, it's sort of taxing the upper body just to keep that dumbbell in position. So Matt's going to go ahead and drop into a squat. Notice that compared to some of these other variations, particularly the box squat, his knees are translating much, much farther forward and his hips don't have to translate as far back. Again, that's going to allow us to bias the quads a bit. Another thing that we have found through some research is the fact that anything that keeps a weight closer to the midline, like a goblet squat, gets a surprising amount of glute activation. So this can be a really good exercise to get a little extra glute activation in as well. We're done. Boom.
This is YouTube, so you gotta say subscribe.
Subscribe. I hate this part, dude. I'm so bad at this. I'm like burnt out. Say
I'll
it.
do it for you. Say it.
Subscribe to my channel, dude, please.
Like,
Please.
subscribe.